Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras, Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. On the program, we discuss making roads safer for pedestrians and bicycles. We begin with a recent visibility ride that took place in Las Cruces, calling attention to the need to make roads in the city safer for all who use them. Johnny Coker reports.
For many in the Las Cruces community, bicycling, walking, and public transit are used as primary modes of transportation. But the roads can be a dangerous place. According to the United States Department of Transportation, New Mexico has the highest number of pedestrian fatalities per capita at nearly twice the national average rate. George Pearson is the president of Las Cruces, a cycling advocacy nonprofit. He said that while the roads in Las Cruces have gotten safer over the years, more needs to be done.
We've got the planning effort has been going really well, but we do really need to do some implementation. My desire and wish is that we have safe bicycle facilities to travel from City Hall to the NMSU campus. Protected bike lanes are a facility type that would separate bicyclists from vehicles, but we don't have any in Las Cruces. It's been on some plans, but they haven't actually been implemented yet, so that's where we need some implementation to happen.
According to the League of American Bicyclists, New Mexico has 9.3 cyclist fatalities for every 10,000 bike commuters, with 85% of people killed on arterial roadways. Pearson says a focus on cycling infrastructure can help make roads safer and create a more inclusive community.
Everybody has to get someplace, and the way that they choose to get there needs to be respected. The infrastructure is kind of forced vehicles on people. Some people can't drive a vehicle, and then they have to rely on either transit or bicycles or even walking. And so we need to make sure that we build safe facilities so that everybody can move. It should be a matter of moving people, not moving vehicles.
According to some public officials within the city, Pearson's goal of creating safer streets is seen as a priority. Becky Graham, Las Cruces City Councilor for District 3, said that she understands the frustration expressed by advocates.
All redesigned streets are being created with pedestrian and cyclist safety in mind, but more importantly is what you might think of as the infill kind of safety. So what can we do to take our existing design and make it as safe and welcoming as possible? And that is collaboration between the city councilors, Public Works Department, who is in charge of streets and street design, and again, the local cycling community and really dedicated advocates who are there to bring us best practices and challenge us to make those best practices a priority.
However, one of the main complaints of Pearson and other advocates is that the city's active transportation coordinator position is vacant. And with recent cyclist deaths in the community, they say the position is needed now more than ever. David Cedillo is the city's public works director. He said that the vacant position hasn't affected his department.
That's a position with our planning and implementation program. However, we do work closely with them on our projects, again, tied to the active transportation plan, to be able to implement some of those identified bike lanes, boulevards, shared lanes, those types of things. It hasn't affected Public Works because there are staff in planning and implementation that have taken on those duties in the interim, and we have been in coordination with them discussing those matters on projects as we move forward.
Cedillo said that while the state's number of pedestrian deaths are high per capita, he's confident in the city's plans to make Las Cruces streets safe.
Public Works staff is dedicated to ensuring that these things change and that they improve, and we're working hard to do that. And as far as an organization goes, I think that is a focus of the organization moving forward. We don't feel that losing a life on the roadway is acceptable. We understand that those things do happen, and we're working to see what we can do to help minimize those things.
In the ongoing effort to ensure the safety of all road users, the conversation around bicycling and pedestrian safety remains a critical focal point for the Las Cruces community. For KRWG Public Media, I'm Johnny Coker.
Our featured guest on this program leads the organization that put on the recent visibility ride in Las Cruces. Please welcome George Pearson, president of Velo Las Cruces. George, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you on the program. Obviously, this is such an important topic in our community and really across the country. I'd like to start off learning a little bit more about your organization. Can you share with us the mission of Velo Las Cruces?
Okay, well, our mission is on our website banner. It's to make Las Cruces and the Sea Valley a better environment for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Such an important issue. Can you share some of the events that you're involved with that help you meet that mission?
Well, I've been volunteering in different things. I'm a league cycling instructor, so I'm qualified to teach the League of American Bicyclists education class on how to ride bicycles safely. Whenever anybody's taking any of our classes, they always come away and say they have learned something. So just because you can get on a bike and ride the bike doesn't mean you can necessarily do it safely. So there are some rules of the road. The basic fundamentals, you can boil it down to be visible and be predictable.
Some really easy points that you could probably share with us, some helpful tips on how folks can be safe on the road when they're on their bicycle?
Follow the rules of the road. Stop at stop signs, stop at red lights. Don't go weaving in and out, especially maybe there's some parked cars and you might have the tendency to try to hug the curb. That makes you unpredictable to the driver. So if you just take a constant lane and continue straight through without weaving around, that helps the driver understand that where you are supposed to be and where they're supposed to be.
Now in New Mexico, we may not see a lot of folks wearing helmets when they're riding their bikes. How important is that to someone on the bicycle?
Helmet is an important safety feature. Of all the safety features on my list, it's the last one, but it's still on the list. But following the rules of the road and expecting traffic, that's very important. Some of these crashes, the crashes that happen, about half of them are the fault of the bicyclist and the other half are the fault of the drivers. So, and a lot of the crashes, about half of them are the cyclists by themselves. So that's where a helmet becomes important.
What about what you're wearing?
Visible attire is good. I'm not wearing my yellow shirt, but I have a t-shirt that is just the safety lime green or whatever it is.
Something that stands out.
Right, and when we do our visibility ride at the train station, when I'm approaching, I can see somebody from 4 blocks away that they're at the train station wearing just that green t-shirt. They don't have to be reflective or anything, but that just helps make you stand out against traffic.
What about when you're riding in the evening hours? Should everybody have lights on their bicycle?
Yes, there's state law and city ordinance that says you need to have a white light on the front where people can see you from, I think it's 500 feet away. And the law says a reflector in the back, but I would recommend a blinky red light. The blinky red light seems well accepted as, look, there's bicycles ahead, so watch out for them.
What other key things you think are really important that could really help folks out? I know wearing gloves may help folks out as well if they get into a slight accident. How can that make a difference?
Well, if you fall down, it'll help protect your hands from being scraped up. If you're doing longer distance riding, the padded gloves help with the nerve endings and make it a more comfortable ride. We don't have the need for rain gear here very much. Other parts of the country have appropriate rain gear, but be appropriately dressed for the environment. So when it's cold, one of the things is don't have dangly things that might get caught up into the bike.
Now, safety for folks on bicycles and safety for pedestrians is so crucial here in our city, in our state. We know New Mexico not ranking so well when it comes to pedestrian safety. Do you have any insight on just how safe it is for people on a bicycle?
The crash statistics are not pleasant to look at. So far this year, I believe there have been 5 bicyclist fatalities in New Mexico, and 3 of them been in Las Cruces. So that's unusually high and very distressing. Pedestrian fatalities, New Mexico is ranked #1 per capita in the nation. So we've got work to do, and that's why part of our organization is here, is to lobby and get City Council's attention so that we actually get some things done.
What are some of the things you're calling on the City Council to address to help make roads safer for those on a bicycle or pedestrians?
Well, there's the idea of Vision Zero. The question is, how many fatalities are acceptable? Well, the answer is 0. So Vision Zero, it's an international effort that's come together. There are different places around the country that have Vision Zero task force. Albuquerque has the Vision Zero task force. That's something that we really need in Las Cruces. The city has done a lot of planning, but not a lot of actual implementation. And so we need to work more towards the implementation. And I think the Vision Zero task force can help identify, do the smallest thing right away that can help improve the situation, and then repeat.
You've also called on the city to fill an active transportation coordinator position. Can you share a little bit about that and give us an update?
Active transportation plan was adopted about 5 years ago, and as part of that recommendation was that we have a separate individual, the active transportation coordinator, so their duties are to identify, make sure that bike parking gets put in, make sure that when new projects come in, the bike facilities are there. And we had a difficult time hiring the first one, and then we had an active transportation coordinator for, I think it was about 1.5 or 2 years, but then he left town, and now the position is open again. And they went through one round of hiring, which was not successful, and so the position is now open. It's open until filled. So if any planners or engineers or anybody that's interested in active transportation, certainly take a look at the city's employment website and put in an application. But they're like the key contact to figure out what the next steps are.
How do you think that position can really make a difference in creating safer roads for pedestrians and those on bicycles?
Well, they would be responsible for looking at the plans as they come through to make sure that things don't get missed. One of the projects that happened before the active transportation coordinator was the Roadrunner extension. And they decided that, well, the whole road is going to be built out in 4 lanes, but they only were going to do half the road. And they did exactly half the road with the bike lane only on one side of the road. And so there would have been room to put bike lanes on both sides and make a safe facility there. But they didn't do that, and so we've got an unsafe facility for half of the roadway. And having somebody in the city that watches these plans and makes sure that those things can happen would help with those projects and make a safer environment for bicyclists.
How receptive do you feel the city is being to these issues that you're pointing to for them to address?
Council itself seems pretty receptive. They respond well, but then at the staff level is where things actually happen, and that's been a little more of a challenge. We've got an example. Alameda Boulevard was the #1 project on the active transportation plan to convert it from a 4-lane road to a road diet, which is a 2-lane road, a center turning lane, and 2 bike lanes. And it took 2 years. The neighborhood was very active in advocating for that, but it was a 2-year process for that to happen. And until finally the city manager just said, well, just do it. And there was still, we got to do these traffic planning efforts before we can know exactly how to do it. But so there seems to be pushback from parts of the city, and that's where we need city council to actually put the money aside so that we can actually do some projects.
What would you like to see happen to address this issue, to make our roads safer for those who are traveling by bicycle or walking, commuting by foot every day? What are some things you think are very easy to do without having to go through the bureaucracy?
Well, having some education. We do have a vulnerable user ordinance where bicyclists are to give pedestrians room, and vehicles are to give bicyclists room, only nobody knows about it. I had an interaction with a police officer at one point who zipped past me way too close, and I happened to have a camera running at the time and took a picture of him, and I went up to him at the next stop sign then and say, hey, don't you know about this? No, he didn't. So if the police department doesn't know, or certain individual officers don't know about it, the public doesn't know about it. One part of that ordinance is, and for example, on Sonoma Ranch Boulevard, it's a 2-lane road. There's not a bike lane. There's a multi-use path over the side, but it's not really usable for transportation cyclists. If you're passing a bicyclist, you're supposed to give them the entire lane. And you can be sure that that doesn't happen. Roadrunner Boulevard is another one. Roadrunner is a horrible roadway, and it's one of those roads where it's about the only choice for anybody driving down the road, and that includes pedestrians and bicyclists.
What cities do you think are doing a top-notch job in making their communities more accessible for people who are traveling by foot or riding their bikes?
The League of American Bicyclists does a ranking. They've got bicycle-friendly communities, and they've got Las Cruces is at the bronze level, then there's silver, gold, platinum, and I think diamond might even be another level above that. The highest levels that we have in New Mexico are silver. I think up in Colorado there are some cities that are pretty active. I think maybe Boulder and Colorado Springs. Like Palo Alto in California is one of the highest ranked cities. So there are some places. New York City did an incredible job at one point with their traffic commissioner. She's left now and done other things, but they just went in and decided we're going to put bike lanes here. And they found out the benefits, not only the safety benefits, but the business benefits. Well, if you have a bike lane, that slows people down. Bicyclists, you got bike parking there, they'll get off and they'll go in your business and spend money.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because when you're traveling by foot or by bike, you view your community a little bit different than if you're just zipping by in a car. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, not only are you interacting with the businesses and see what's there, you're interacting with each other. You wave at the other bicyclists. You might see somebody that you know that you can just stop and have a 3-minute conversation and then continue on. You can't do that in a car.
What do you think you learn about your city when you're traveling on a bike or by foot?
Well, what struck me, one incident, is how beautiful it is. I was over by the Armijo Lateral, which runs behind where the Community of Hope area is, and got on the trail area, on the EBID lateral that's there, and all of a sudden you look up and there's the lateral happened to be full of water at that point, and then there's the mountains behind. It's like, wow, this is beautiful. Nobody knows about this, and here I am, be able to appreciate that. So that's the kind of thing that's available.
Your organization promotes cycling in our community. Can you share a little bit about how you do that and why cycling can be so attractive to folks in our region?
Well, we have our monthly visibility ride that demonstrate that bicyclists belong and they can interact safely with vehicles. We don't have very many cycling events. One that we're sponsoring with the city that's coming up. We used to have the mayor's bike ride, but the mayor decided he didn't want to do the bike ride this year. So we're going to work with city council. So it's going to be the city council bike ride this year. It's going to be September 16th, a Saturday at 10 o'clock at City Hall. So we hope to get the community out and demonstrate and show people, get together, have a good time.
One of the things that I've found here riding a bike for many years was that you do view community a little bit different. You do get to see some certain sights that you might not find if you're just zipping by in a car. What other things do you think folks can really find enjoyment with when they're riding a bike in our community?
Well, being able to stop at the little neighborhood coffee shops and such, the brew pubs that are around. There's the Bike and Chowder Club, for example, that has a bike ride quite regularly, and at the end of every bike ride they go to a coffee shop or someplace and get together and and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of excitement about it. You also work with other groups to meet your mission as well. Can you share a little bit about your partnerships?
Well, there's Vulnerable Road Users of New Mexico that we're working with. Their mission is to identify distracted driving is a big issue where people are not paying proper attention to the road when they're driving. Las Cruces has, as part of our group, there's Everybody Rides with Grace, which is an effort to provide adaptive cycles to disabled people, mostly youth it's been. So Down syndrome or something like that. They can't ride a two-wheel bicycle, but they can ride a tricycle. Only they're very expensive and the families can't afford it. So we've been able to acquire some grants and provide bicycles to that group.
Now, one other thing that we haven't talked about is fighting pollution when more people use bikes. Can you share a little bit more about that?
I don't have the numbers, but it's obvious.
Well, I think we saw it with the pandemic when
Right.
everybody stopped driving all of a sudden, how that affected.
Right, the air was suddenly clear. And it's the same kind of thing. It's an extra hot dog or something to ride the bike. It's just there's the standing, vehicle standing and sitting at the stop signs and blowing out pollution. That doesn't happen when you're on a bike. E-bikes are something that are becoming more popular, and people might criticize, oh, that's not a real bike. Well, it is a bike, and the studies have shown that the health benefits are as good as on an e-bike as they are on the regular bike. And that's versus sitting on the couch or sitting behind the wheel. You're getting up, you're moving, and you're getting that cardio, and that's really helping with the health benefits.
And I think, you mentioned getting that cardio and exercise, taking on obesity and maybe some of the other challenges that we're dealing with in our region. How can riding a bike really play a role in that?
Demonstration is quite easy. That bike riding is a lot. I've got too much weight on, and it's a good thing that I ride my bike because otherwise it'd be really bad.
I was always curious about that because, even when you're riding your bike here in New Mexico, you get that workout in, you get that extra couple miles that
Right.
that you might not have gotten before. You're going up and down hills, so there's a lot more
Well, I think the
challenging things.
I'll have to look up the exact numbers, but the federal guidelines are like 20 minutes a day of activity. Well, when I was commuting to work, it was a 20-minute bike ride to work and a 20-minute bike ride home. So I got in all that activity on the way to work, where it would take almost 20 minutes to get in the car and get to the same place. So
One thing we're also dealing with now more than ever, or perhaps we're just paying attention to it more, is stress. It seems like things are moving very fast in our world these days. There are people are sharing being stressed out more, addressing their behavioral mental health needs. How can riding a bike just kind of help take the stress out?
Well, there's been a couple of comments from people that I know. They say that their employees can tell when they didn't ride their bike to work. And I don't know if it's anecdotal or if they have valid statistics, but just the level of stress of being in traffic behind the wheel is much higher than just being on the bike and taking, you don't go more than 20 miles an hour maybe if you're going down a hill, 12 to 15 miles an hour on the flat. And the enjoyment is such greater. You hardly ever see anybody riding a bike that's not smiling.
That's true. It does give you that feeling like you're 8 years old again for some reason. That's in my what I've found while I was riding. One other thing, I want to get back to the safety on the roads issue. How much of a difference does the vehicles we drive now compared to maybe 30 years ago play a role in safety on the roads?
Especially for pedestrian safety. These big vehicles where if you walk up to them, you can't see the person in front of you over the hood of the vehicle. I remember looking at an crash report in Albuquerque. An older lady who was walking across the crosswalk and the light changed green and the guy didn't see her and just ran her over and killed her. And they've shown if you get a bunch of kids in front of the car, you need 20 kids out in front of the car before you can see the kid from inside the vehicle. The statistics, the fatality statistics are going down for vehicle drivers, but that's because there are these huge, big vehicles. And it also reflects why it's going up for pedestrian fatalities. And nationally, it's a serious problem. And it's something that the federal government needs to look at. Only the federal government, I think, can put in the controls. They've got a 5-star rating for vehicles that they put on the window that see how it's rated. But for pedestrian safety, that is hidden on the manufacturer's website someplace where you can barely find it. It's something that should be part of the consideration when people go to buy their vehicle, is how safe is this for not only for me, but for the people outside of the vehicle.
I only have about 30 seconds left, but during the pandemic, we saw this resurgence of folks purchasing bicycles and getting out there and riding them. Do you think this is a special time for growing interest in bicycles?
Well, I would certainly hope so. There's also the economic aspects. It costs about $10,000 a year to own a vehicle. Well, if you can change a 2-vehicle household to a 1-vehicle household, that's money that you can spend. And it's buying even a brand new bicycle. If you spend $5,000 on an e-bike, you've got the top of the line thing.
Wow. Well, George Pearson, president of Velo Las Cruces, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me.
That's all for our program. Remember, you can stay updated anytime with news at krwg.org. We're on social media as well. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.